Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for...
UnSpun!
People are going to have... What was it last week? You said you were playing the harmonica. People were like, what are you, smoking pot?
Yeah,
what were you? You were coughing, you were sneezing.
It's good. It's good fun. This will be my new thing.
Operatic.
Operatic, yeah.
I dig that about you. Episode 35, UnSpun, George_Affleck, at Jody Vance, at the Orca BC. You might be listening to us where? On Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your
Should be able to get it on any of the podcast
YouTube.
networks.
Sometimes we get an explicit on YouTube when we drop like the errant
like that.
swearsies.
We've been quite good lately. We've been very polite and unsweary.
So far. Have you noticed, and it was you taking a drink right there that made me think of it, that more and more on social media and elsewhere, people are commenting on the 40 plus members of the communication staff. And I honest to God, I'm hearing people
43,
say...
for example?
Like
more
43.
Than 43, what?
So I think it's becoming a thing. People are hearing us, George.
It's not even it's a real fact. There are more than 40, there's probably 50 now. I mean, 43 is what I had when I left, so.
And most of the summer, it felt like there were none there, so they clearly all get summers off. Because we could not track down Mayor Kennedy Stewart for the life of us all summer long. I've been filling in at CKNW over the course of the summertime. But then he emerged last week, as we mentioned on the podcast.
About he came pulled out of his little, wherever he lives in the summer, and
what's this?
Just pulled out of his little hole. He's like, what's that thing that in the spring where they know if it's spring or not?
Oh, Groundhog Day. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, we call it Groundhog Day for Kennedy. He popped up last week to do a photo op with the Prime Minister, which I was thinking about that, and I don't think we talked about it, but does that mean he's not potentially going to vie for leadership of the NDP if that job becomes available, because now he's hooking himself to the Liberals and to get his things for the city, it limits his ability to slam him, I suppose. But politics are weird. But I would say that although he said this week to another journalist, I think it was the Metro Star, he said he would campaign for Jenny, and that's NDP. So. Interesting. It is interesting.
From a layman's point of view, clearly you know more about the inner workings of politics and running for office. I look at it as anything to create a marquee name around your name. So right now, standing next to the Prime Minister serves its purpose. It's gonna, and he's very on script on its affordability, its housing, it's the subway. I mean, he's it's the opioid crisis. He's very specific. No matter where I saw a piece, no matter who spoke with him, he stuck to the script in that regard. And I'm sure Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau, has his, messaging that he'd like out there too.
Yes, well, it's the middle class, right?
It's the middle.
It's all about the middle for him.
So let's talk about the downtrodden, because Mayor Kennedy Stewart
also held a press conference yesterday about the downtown east side, specifically Oppenheimer Park. What was interesting, he said he wants to take over the park from Park Board. So just to be clear, the Oppenheimer Park is part of the Park Board. In Vancouver, if you don't understand, there is an elected Park Board, and there's an elected City Council, and there's an elected School Board.
I remember that ballot was long.
It was very long. So it's very unusual to have a Park Board. Usually, in most cities, the parks are managed by the city through their Parks and Recreation Departments.
Why are we unique like that?
It's over 100 years. It's just a tradition. The parks that we have and the beauty of the parks that we have is built because, and some would argue, certainly John Cooper has pointed this out, the reason we have such amazing parks is because this independent Park Board has managed the parks independently, and it's elected, so it has to answer to the people every 4 years now.
We wouldn't have the Bodell Conservatory if
we wouldn't have
John
Stanley
Cooper.
Park. We wouldn't have these are the things that people
parks.
And Envision did a very they attempted to try and weaken the Park Board in their time.
How?
It's not uncommon. Well, they cut their funding significantly. They didn't build any community centers. They didn't do much in the parks. They really damaged our parks because of cuts and because of just overall management.
So the city manages the Park Board's funds.
Provides them, yes. They have the funds.
And then they must
they
work.
come from the tax dollars.
Okay.
Then a big chunk of the Park Board money comes through fees, and they have had to rely on those more than ever.
But it's not like the city can come in and raid the fund, right?
No, they have done that. With the capital fund last term, the Vision took a bunch of the capital money out. They put a motion forward, which I voted against, and they were able to extract a bunch of the capital funding that had not been dedicated to any specific projects yet. And so they.
So if they were saving for if the park board was saving for something and hadn't put it on the books yet,
gone.
Oh man.
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to the downtown east side because I want to get back to that.
To that point. So yes, the mayor came out and said, the park board's not doing enough at Oppenheimer Park, and so I'm going to ask if I can take control of this situation
temporarily.
Well, I mean, what does that even mean?
But is it a slippery?
Possible? Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope. And people who are park board supporters are like supporters. They're like hardcore.
The supporters.
Supporters.
I wanted to say militant, but you can be militant in your support of parks.
Yeah, but you can also be not. But I mean, these people are like 100%. You can see on Twitter. They are.
Just float the idea of turning a golf course in the city into affordable housing,
or have the park board elect to take it away. That thing just like people go. Bah!
It does it. It fills your feed. Okay, so if the city wants control of Oppenheimer Park, help me noodle this, George. Because Oppenheimer Park is about this. Okay, if this is the downtown east side, this is Oppenheimer Park. And all of East Hastings is out of control, off the hook, and the city has control.
It's
right?
Mayor Stewart.
So if the city could clean up the rest of it, I could see how they could say this and that.
The irony of this statement of him, I'm going to take care of this Oppenheimer Park situation. Meanwhile, 1 block away on Hastings, it's chaos. I mean, dude, get your house in order, fix the problem that you do have control of before you start slamming around park board. Now, I agree that there's something going on at park board here. They didn't put an injunction.
Let's explain this in full, because I've just educated myself a little bit on this in the last week, doing the radio. So what happened first was there was a call to action to clear the park.
Right. So the general manager of the park board had the ability, with the police and staff and local
rescue
organizations and the firefighters, is to go in there and get people out of there, find them new homes. It wasn't an aggressive action. It was like, we have homes for you. Come, let's move you out.
118 of you now have shelter, and then what remained was a number of people who refused that help or were perhaps activists.
Protesters making their point, absolutely good point. We have a problem with homelessness in the city, so they say we're not moving. And so the next action, and this happened several years ago, where the park board, which at that time was dominated by the NPA, made a decision to get a court order to basically have them removed.
Forcefully removed is the next.
Forcefully, but not,
not like send in the army.
Taking your tents down, you're out of here, basically.
You have no choice.
And it went fine last time. It wasn't, and we still found homes for those people, and everything was fine.
So, but the park board would have to go to that injunction phase.
They have to
once that order ran out, and the order expired last Wednesday, and then nothing happened.
We don't know what happened in camera, but let's look at the makeup of the current park board. It's 2 COPE, 2 NPA, 3 Green Party. So yesterday, and I think we know where John and I think Tricia Barker stand.
So those are the NPA?
John has kind of alluded to the fact that he would support an injunction. I put it out on Twitter yesterday saying, okay, COPE and Green, where are you going on this? Are you going to support an injunction and get COPE immediately responded, absolutely not. We're not going to support this, which is basically what the mayor would be doing. I think that's why he wants to get control. He thinks he can get the injunction to get these people to move along, which I don't know if he actually would, but this council, to be honest, because he has to get a majority decision on that too. So now we know there's 2 no, we know there's potentially 2 yes for an injunction.
Right. So the
that
Greens
have
3
the
Green
power.
Party,
and they have not responded. I have heard nothing about this park from the Green Party. They are completely, in my mind.
Can the chair, Stuart McKinnon, I can't find him either.
Yeah, he's completely invisible. He's more invisible than the mayor, who, by the way, jokingly said yesterday to media about this issue, well, the chair of the park board can't get a meeting with the prime minister. It's like, oh my God, get off your high horse. So,
going back to the mayor wanting to ask for temporary control of Oppenheimer Park so that he can get an injunction and have movement on this where there seems to be a stalemate with the park board. I have to say, for all the fun we have at the expense of Kennedy Stewart, I kind of feel like there's a tone in the city of frustration, like somebody better do something soon because this is cyclical.
But it's yes,
so
agreed.
Something,
but he also knows this makeup of this park board. He knows that they have to get 2/3 vote to get the support. he could talk to Adrian Carr and find out what's going on with them, the Greens. Are they going to support it? I think this was a total play to make it look like he was leading on this, and he's not. He's not, because if you just have to go to Hastings Street, you just have to look at what's happening in our city and see he's done nothing. I mean, all to Gregor's fault. At least he talked about the issue, about homelessness, and tried to, whatever.
Yeah, what year was that going to end?
2015.
Right.
This guy talks about housing, but he doesn't talk about homeless. He never brings up homelessness, really.
So when we talk about the downtown east side, and we talk about the homelessness issue, and we talk about the opioid crisis, we talk about poverty, we're actually doing an event, a group of us are doing an event at Save on Meats called Plenty of Plates on Monday. And basically, we go in, we raise the money for the food, we go in, we cook the meal, we serve to 100 people in Save on Meats who probably haven't had a nutritious meal in a while, and then on the back end, another 550 people get fed healthy meals based on the funds we raise. It's kind of a team building. I've got a number of chef friends, as you know, who are coming out to partake, and it's like the last week, the reason I bring all that up is not like a pat on my back. It's like we talked about last week, the need for community to also step up. We want our politicians to do what's right, but I tell you what, I'm more nervous about running around down there at 9:30 on a Monday evening, maybe a rainy Monday night, than I was even a month ago. I feel rather safe and secure on the downtown east side. I don't feel like I'm a target. But there's a tension that, like the guy that's running around punching people, and there's another one that got threatened with a gun, and there's another, like the temperature there is going up. So what about the residents down there?
I know, that's in the business. I mean, there's this polarization happening down there on the east side, and on the side that is saying, these people who are in this situation, who are living there, they have their supporters, they have their aggressive approach, they show up at City Hall, they are now represented for the most part by Gene Swanson, and then you have the other side who are more extreme where they want to just let's get hoses and power wash this whole area and tear these, there's
middle people,
and that's where I think, and the poll that they did about Oppenheimer Park with the residents was around 80% saying, get them out of here.
Yeah, we got to do something here, guys.
So the people who live and work down there, and that area includes Strathcona, includes the Woodwards building, Gastown.
Right, it's not just Hastings.
Not just Hastings.
No.
It appears the overwhelming majority of people in that neighborhood who should be where our city's built on neighborhoods. We think
it would be interesting to know officially what that.
That's a good question, and that's exactly what I'm thinking.
How do we find out?
It's a George thought. I think we need to get the specific data from the people who live down there and work down there to say, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to go and tear down these buildings and put up social housing and spend billions to do that immediately? Or do you want us to just move these people along? Or do you want us to leave them the way it is?
There could be a series of questions that hopefully aren't ridiculously politicized and complicated.
Yeah.
As we see on most ballots.
And I'm not a fan of referendums, but if this one's very focused on the neighborhood, I think it can be very effective in helping to understand, for city council especially, who are clearly highly sensitive to anybody who comes in there and yells and screams and are swayed by that, and they have been several times in this past year. This would provide them with a solid base of saying, okay, this is what the people in this neighborhood, the majority, want. So let's do that.
And let's have that.
Well, we live in a democracy.
But when we talk about majorities, when we talk about majorities, fascinating, frustrating to note that the taxi industry, the Vancouver taxi industry,
here we go,
is taking the PTB to court, because the PTB, the
good old courts,
Provincial Transportation Board, the independent board that said, you know what, Lyft can come. Now Uber's applied, likely Uber's coming. Ride hailing is coming. And the taxi industry, ever since that first announcement that Lyft was coming, has been flailing. Then the Uber announcement came that, yes, we're going to come to town too. Then it has been like visceral, vocal, and like slamming the government, and you broke promises, and da-da-da. And it's like, okay, so now court? I hope my tax dollars are not going.
I mean, it's like, well, obviously the taxi industry has seen the NDP do this as a tool to slow down the process. They're using it with Kinder Morgan. They used it with everything. Vision did it all the time, suing this person, taking this to court, going this way. You spend all this court time, and almost always, I don't think they have some wins, but generally you lose. Thank God for
it's just a great time waster.
Our unbiased judicial system, unlike in America where they have elected judges and they have a in federal court that is clearly weighted one way or the other, depending on who was in power for a certain number of years. The courts we have in this country are fairly good at saying, yeah, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping. I mean, this is a nuisance lawsuit in my mind.
You know what this is in my mind, George Affleck? Do you know the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I love that movie. If you watch it through the credits long enough, you know, Ferris goes in, has a shower. He talks to you in the shower with his mohawk and whatever, and then he goes and he comes out and he ends up coming out of the bathroom and he turns to the camera and he goes, "It's over.
Why are you here?
Why are you still here? Go home. It's over." That's why I want the taxi industry to actually, you know what? It's over. So to talk amongst yourselves on lifting the boundaries, lift the boundaries, serve the people. The market is going to decide.
And if they want to, fine. I mean, I think that's an argument saying that the minister should lift the boundaries for them too. Then fine. Okay.
I think so.
But they don't want that either, though.
They don't want that either because certain cab companies have a monopoly on that. And when the
cake and eat it too. What's that?
Yeah, you can't eat your cake. I mean, have your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
Right.
But then the minister, Claire Trevina, is saying also she's going to come out about being this whole issue of cabs on the road. This is your issue.
Oh God!
About
you're going to make my head explode.
Create more
congestion
in our cities with too many Ubers out there.
Do you read my column, George?
I did.
Okay, a couple weeks ago.
And we agreed on this.
We did agree on this. Mm-hmm. It makes me crazy when the argument against ride-hailing is that the roads will suddenly become strangled in gridlock congestion.
Yeah.
Whereas we've had Uber Eats, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, blah, 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 for years now.
Mm-hmm.
Services that go and pick up your McDonald's or your Tim Hortons, yes, or your fancy meal, but I know so many people that send a car to get them a double-double and a donut. Like, are you kidding me? But if they hailed a car to get into it to go to Tim Hortons,
no,
that's congestion. But if they actually just text the car to go to Tim Hortons and bring it back to them, that's not.
It's different.
It makes me crazy. Claire, please, Ms. Trevena. Please don't.
And I just think about my life, and I think everybody I know, most of my friends don't have cars, or they rely on. And I was the chair of the car co-op, which is now called Moto, back in the early days of it. And we had, I remember 221, so early member, and using car sharing in those days in the late 90s.
I'm a car-to-goer.
And now, of course, that network, you got Car2Go, you got Evo, you got all these companies. So that's one use. And then now you've got Uber, and you've got taxis. It gets people from owning a car, which is, of course...
Isn't that the goal?
Isn't that the goal? The manufacturing of cars. I think about the cost for me now. I'm going, okay, my car, and it's a really old 2003 Toyota Sienna dad van, which, by the way, if you were in the election, you were probably seeing it driving around with a bunch of people in it, campaigning. I think it might cost $2,000 a year for insurance. Gas is a few $100 a month. Upkeep, a few $100 a month. Yeah. And then I think if a new car, add another $500. You're looking at easily, $10,000 a year. I mean, I can't imagine I'd be spending that much if I lived in a city and needed to get around.
I would give up my car, and I drive a hybrid, so my gas per month is like $50, which is great.
Right.
My insurance is $2,000. So I'm doing the math, and if I could access the car when I needed it, and I mean the ride-hailing piece, that I can say, because my kid's old enough now that I feel like I could call a cab and say, can you take him to there? Without necessarily me going with. That would also be a comfort level.
We were at Disney World, we did that.
Cab? I would call a cab.
But at Disney World, we did that. I put the kids out and sent them off on the car I think it was Uber, off to Disney World early in the morning. They wanted to go earlier. I said, I'll get you an Uber and adios, kids. Have fun. I'll see you there in 4 hours when I've.
And everybody's like, but that's not safe. You rate them, they rate you.
You can literally see where they're driving, where they are.
Yeah.
Anyways.
It's an ongoing discussion. This taxi discussion.
This doesn't stall it.
I don't think it's going to. I really, again, I'm very naive on such things. I often lose the bet, but I hope that by the holiday season, that citizens of British Columbia or Metro Vancouver, the citizens of Metro Vancouver will be better serviced over the holiday season, so that we see a dramatic and drastic reduction in counterattack arrests and alcohol-related accidents. Mm-hmm. I think that not having the availability of cabs or ride-hailing is a direct line to that. And at the end of the day, I don't care how much you paid for whatever to do whatever, because you mentioned Moto car. We used a moto truck this weekend. We had to bring a big freezer from point A to point B. And our friend went, oh, I've got moto, we'll do it. We used it for an hour. It was $9. You want to talk about who might be going out of business? U-Haul. Because it's $125, even if you need it for an hour, but you got to rent it for 24 and da-da-da. That moto truck moved a commercial-sized stand-up freezer in 1 hour for $9.
And your friend's strength.
My friend's like absolute hero, because now I'm like thrilled with what I have in my house without it having
disruptive
been a nightmare.
Technology. You have to get used to it, and I think that sharing is the way we're going. And Vancouver is a leader in the world of this. That's what is so funny and strange that we haven't got Uber yet, because every other sharing platform we were ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
And here we are still waiting, and these guys are suing and are taking to court. You're like, oh my God, come on.
Speaking of court, Kinder Morgan.
Yeah, well, there's another one, right? So they got six of the 12 of the items that they're going to be able to push forward to court. So they're playing more stall tactics there, and we'll see how that goes. It's just like exhausting.
It's getting built, though.
I mean, it shows you why the federal government had to buy it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way any private company would have put up with this. They would have walked away a long time ago.
Let's talk about government on another level, because it kind of goes with those against the Kinder Morgan are often very concerned about environment, and they're environmentalists or perhaps climate alarmists, which was a wording that Maxime Bernier used against 14-year-old Greta Thunberg.
She's Norwegian, or she's from Scandinavia, I think, or Swedish.
I think she's Swedish.
Yeah.
I don't know. Amanda, do you know if Greta Thunberg?
I think she's
Greta?
Swedish. I think she's Swedish.
But she's 14 years old. And she was in Time magazine, I believe was where I read it, where it was talking, Swedish, thank you, talking about her Asperger's syndrome that she was diagnosed with at a very young age. And these activists, this one side, I'll push right on it, people that want to say she's an alarmist, people like Max Bernier on Twitter apparently, saying that she is a pawn of her parents, and that they're using her disability, air quotes, if you're not watching this, come air quotes up, when in fact, if you've read anything about this young woman, as a young girl, as a 10, 11-year-old, she was similar to Elizabeth May in being an activist at such an early age. This has nothing to do with Asperger's.
And the fact that she had Asperger's made her a hero to any kids who have Asperger's.
Right.
Which are, the scale is significant with Asperger's, but here is this hero, and this guy is slamming her?
He's slamming her in such an inappropriate way. It was just today on Twitter, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up, that he had a series of 5 tweets where he's trying to walk it back. And he's kind of trying to walk it back in a Trumpian way.
Walking back something?
Yeah, and you know what? That's
got to be heat from the inside.
Right.
That can't be.
Do you think?
Well, I mean, he's never apologized that I've ever seen since he started this party, and they're totally extremists, and they're very Trumpy in their way. He must have been taking a lot of heat internally. You
don't attack a young, bright woman, teenager, who just traveled across the Atlantic on a sailboat to make her point about zero carbon footprint when she went to a climate gathering. I mean, celebrate the fact that she's so committed.
Who cares about the issue?
The rest of
Focus on the fact that this young woman
is what she believes in. She's the Malala of climate. She's Malala of environment. And Malala Yousafzai has had her message and has been celebrated in such a way. She's had her own backlash from people who are crazy on another. What I tweeted at Greta Thunberg was, when they start attacking you, you know you've found your points. Because it's until you're making valid points that they can't push back on, people just leave you alone. Then you start talking about stuff that gets into their business, and they're like, wait a minute.
And this is just making that party irrelevant more and more, and must make Scheer happy, because that he won't lose many votes to him.
Right.
However,
to the People's Party
in the Maritimes,
oh God!
the Green Party and the NDP, which, by the way,
what happened there, George?
The Conservatives are going to get hurt more from this.
Okay, but explain that. So in New Brunswick.
So there was this announcement that they were going to have this one party member from the NDP cross the floor and said, I'm going to be running for the Green Party. And he said then that all 14 of his fellow MPs from the NDP were going to do the same thing. And there was some comment about they were concerned about the racism across the province, or certain areas of the province, because their leader is Sikh, and therefore they don't want to support the NDP.
What did Charles Adler say? It was like they have a turban problem.
Yeah.
No.
And you're sort of going, this was huge. This was like a big deal. The Green Party is what a victory in some way. Like the turban issue and the whole racist stuff aside, this was a huge deal that potentially all these people were going to cross the floor and run for Green and just obliterate the NDP in the Maritimes. But it turns out, as it came out today, the NDP are going, not true.
No, nobody asked us for 14.
I mean, what happened?
What happened?
And so obviously Elizabeth May is getting a lot of heat. Why, it's in the news today that this was actually inaccurate, that this is one guy who did this, but all the other people are saying, no, we're good.
But the unspun on that, though, George, is that people are only going to really hear the today bit, or will they have only heard the before
it's really
bit?
hard. This is what Trump's made a career of, right?
Yeah.
He's made his entire political strategy is just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
But
never apologize.
Never apologize for what you did, and that's really hard to make that become erase what you've. This issue now that these people crossed over has made the Green Party look like they're super strong. People are talking about it all the time. It's going to be really hard to get that genie out of the bottle, which at this point the NDP are a dying party, and the Green Party is growing and expanding and taking over. That's the conversation that's going to hard, because that's kind of been bubbling already.
And that was the narrative that I had in my head before seeing what I saw and that letter that said no, the 14 from the NDP saying no, we're good. I totally thought there was no NDP MP in New Brunswick. Like they're taking a pass on this. They're all they're out.
That's not true.
That's not true at all.
It also shows you, and I mean, the strength of the NDP machine will prove if they can turn that story around. But based on what they've been doing so far as a party, I don't think they have the machine there.
Maybe they should try some Sharpy moves. Have you watched the Trump stuff with the Sharpy?
You were telling me about this morning. He's changed the
map, the projected course of Dorian, because he was worried about Alabama, which is like over here on the map.
It's not like even on.
No, and he said, I'm worried about Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Alabama. And the National Weather Service in the United States said, Alabama's not in the course.
Calm down, Alabama. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
But then Trump in the Oval Office, I guess on Wednesday, had somebody from the Hurricane Center, I can't remember the gentleman that was sitting next to him, looking extremely uncomfortable. And it was very obvious that a Sharpie, which Trump uses all the time, had drawn an extra little arc or echo, and Donald Trump spent most of the time explaining that this was the projected path that I originally saw that could have gone across Florida and hit Alabama, and everybody's like, good Lord. So
Mark Madriga is
written in Sharpie.
I'm in charge of the weather.
We have 10 million downloads on
10 million.
UnSpun.
It's written in Sharpie.
It's written in Sharpie, and I even
UnSpun. 10 million. No way.
#1 podcast in North America.
No.
Yeah. It's in Sharpie.
It's in Sharpie.
It's right there.
It's got to be true.
It is true, George. It is true. It is also true that you can always find us at theorca.ca. Find the Orca BC on Twitter. George.
_
Don't forget the _ Affleck. Jody Vance. That's Jody with a Y. And
read your article this week.
Wrote my column.
Pools.
I love a pool. I don't understand the whole concept of shutting down community pools, the small ones, the Lord Bings, the Templetons, the what have you. We love the outdoor pools in Vancouver. They're like the jewels of our city. Kids Pool is the #1 outdoor saltwater pool in the world. When people swim, it doesn't matter what their age, it's a life skill. Kids being kept busy and fit after school on a rainy, dark day in November. Also, the people recovering from injury that the doctor says you should go float.
More pools.
And
the city has
the money's there. The small pools.
The money is there. The park board has it. The city has it. The money's there. Start building some pools. Start building some ice rinks. Start building some indoor soccer fields. Start building some community centers. Get to work.
Start with pools, because I went to Lord Bing this past weekend because the 12-year-olds in my life said we want to go there, even though it was gorgeous outside, because they got this rope swing. $2 a kid. And they can stay there all day if they want to after the age of 9. Literally, if your kid knows how to swim, there's a place for them to play and have fun for nothing, basically nothing. This is affordability for families.
This is what makes Vancouver livable, and how you deal with density, is you give the people services, you give them pools, you give them community centers, you give them these things to alleviate the stress of living in a dense city.
And that family of 4 in 600 square feet have the pool in the neighborhood. No, they don't have to drive across town or go downtown or out to UBC, pay for parking, pay for this, pay for that. They can walk to their community pool or their indoor soccer. I love that
Yeah.
But as long as you
stood on
make
the
it,
sidelines of many soccer
but it
games.
needs to be affordable, right? Because I'm able to put my kid into that fancy baseball camp at UBC. It's expensive. He's learning to play bass guitar. It's expensive. It's $1,000 for 10 weeks.
Kids can start a band.
Okay.
We got bass, we got guitar, we got
I'll fight you.
twin on
I'll
the
fight you for the
harmonica the other day.
I'll fight you for the mic. Who's going to be lead singer? I'm Jody. He's George. That's it for this week.
Thanks.